Okay, and that is the keynote to know the history about DotVVM, in this case presented by Tomáš Herceg. He is a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional and, if I'm not wrong, Regional Director of Microsoft in him country as well, and also DotVVM, author of DotVVM. And in this case, I don't know if you do this previously to talk about the history in a most social or to your journal creating this framework.
Yeah, sure. I will be happy to share the story behind the framework, because I haven't been talking about it much. I was more talking about the features we have been adding, or how the development works, or what we can do with DotVVM, but I have never really talked about how it was created and what was the idea behind it. So I'm happy to share this information. So it's maybe let's start with the first. I have the slides. I'm not sure if you can.
Yes, I'm going
display
to
them.
add. I'm to add. And remember, if you have comments, for example, hi to Don. It's a pleasure to greet you. And remember, we will have awesome gifts across the event. And in this case, the screen now is shown in the stream, so we can see now.
Perfect. So, of course, if you have any questions, just send us comment, and I will give the answers if I know them. I should, because it's about the thing we have been doing. So hopefully it will be fine. So maybe for the first timers who joined us recently, so what exactly is DotVVM? So basically it's a framework that allows you to build web applications in the C# language. So if you are a .NET developer, if you like C# programming, you will be able to create web applications using DotVVM, and it's very easy. One of the key features of the framework, one of the reasons why we created this, is to make it easier to create web applications than before. So DotVVM focuses on a great productivity for all the .NET developers. So we want you to be really productive. We want you to be able to finish all your tasks, to do what you are supposed to do quickly and easily. So the framework provides quite a lot of abstraction over common scenarios or common things that you can see in web applications. And there are a couple of things that helps with. First is that the framework contains a lot of built-in components. So you don't need to write everything from scratch. You have quite a lot of components that are usable, and you can just use them for doing things you want. So for example, if you want to render some table with data from database, it's very easy to do with DotVVM, and it will support sorting and all those stuff that tables on the web support. And we have components for a lot of other things, so it's pretty easy to use. And of course, you can apply styles on the components. You can fine-tune them so they will better fit your needs, and then you will just compose the application from the individual components. The other thing that really helps is the data binding and model view model approach. This is a little bit technical. I know that we have a lot of beginners watching us. So this is I would say this is the way of connecting the web page to some data. So if you have a database where you store some information, data binding allows you to easily connect the item from the database and display it to in the web page. Or if user enters some information, you can data bind it back to the database. And if you compare DotVVM to other frameworks, because DotVVM is not the only way to build web applications, there are React, Angular, and a lot of other Blazor, a lot of other frameworks. Most of these frameworks require that you have some API on the server, and the framework will communicate with this API. DotVVM It's supposed to be easy to use, so you don't need to build this kind of API. You can just connect the database from the .vvm code, and on the behind there will be API, but you don't need to do anything special to create it. .vvm will provide this API for you. So it's quite easy to do a lot of things in .vvm, and of course we are building the framework. We are constantly working in order to improve it and enhance it and add new features. So of course we are looking for other things that can be simplified, and then we will implement them into .vvm. So these things will be also very simple. So I have a demo, so you can imagine how creating this application would work in .vvm. So I have installed Visual Studio 2019, which is the developer environment for .NET. If you are using .NET, you probably know it. And I have installed .vvm for Visual Studio, which is an extension for Visual Studio that you can download from the .vvm website. So if I type the address correctly, just .vvm.com, and you can click on this green button in the corner, so you will be able to download the Visual Studio. There is the instructions. You basically need to go to the extensions menu in Visual Studio and search for .vvm and download the extension directly from the Visual Studio. So it's quite easy. And if you do that, you will be able to create a new .vvm project. So if I click on Create New Project, I will be able to see .vvm extension. I'm not sure why it's so slow, but I guess that the streaming slows my computer down a bit. So if you search for .vvm, you will see that there are some project templates, and you can create the project. We are using the .NET Core version of the project because it's the newer one. So I can create a simple application. I can add some libraries, some samples at the beginning. I don't want anything like this. I want just a pure, simple .vvm application. And after a few seconds, if you want to stream your screen to this service, it would be much faster. Normally it takes just 2 or 3 seconds. You will see the Visual Studio, which will contain the new project. So again, we need to wait a couple of seconds because my laptop is not the newest, so it takes some time. And also I have ReSharper, which also slows some things down, so sorry for this. Okay, so let's close these windows. And this is the .vvm project. You can see that it looks like a normal .NET application. So if you have been working with .NET, it's not something very different. However, there are 2 basic folders. One is called views, and the second is view models. And basically, these views, these are just HTML pages. They define the content of the page. So in order to create web applications, you of course need to know at least the basics of HTML. So you can see this is normal HTML syntax, and .vvm adds some enhancements to the .vvm to the HTML syntax. So for example, this expression, it's called a data binding expression. It says that, okay, look in the view model and find the title property and just print it out in the page. So if I go to the view model, which every page should have its view model. So I have this, and view model is just a C# class, and I have a property called title, and I'm setting some value. And of course, you can load this value from the database, or it's up to you how you populate these properties with values. But whenever you want to print these, you will be able to see the result in the application. So if I run this page, it's just a sample default page in the new project. It will Also, normally it takes just 2 or 3 seconds. With the streaming, it will be like 20, I guess. But it's already starting, and you will see the browser will pop up, and the page will hopefully load, and you will see the title "Hello from .vvm" because that's the value that we set in the code behind. So sorry for the delays. I should have prepared some jokes to fill in these waiting gaps. Okay, so it seems that Visual Studio is doing a lot of work. Not sure why. Maybe this will speed the things up. Okay. Okay, let's try it just again. Maybe the Visual Studio is not in good conditions because it shouldn't be that slow. Oh wow! Hello, super. After 2 minutes, you have the screen. So this is the demo page. However, this text is dynamic. So of course, it's because it's bound from the view model. So if I go here and change the value in the view model like this, so let's say hello everyone. Yeah. Now I can just rebuild the application and go back to the browser, and hopefully when I refresh the page, you will see that this value was changed. So this is how you can make things dynamic in the page. So let's do something else, because this is very simple demonstration of the data binding. Let's do something else. You can use components which are part of the framework. So for example, we have the text box control, and I can bind it to the same property as the title here. And because the data bindings work in 2 ways, so if somebody changes the value in the text box, it will propagate to the view model, and from there it will appear here in this title. So this will also allow the user to change the title. And you can also create buttons. For example, there is a button control. So we can do this, and we can say that if somebody clicks the button, I want to run a command. So I will say command, and for example, change title. And I can, as you can see, the Visual Studio extension, it sees this function doesn't work. It's not declared anywhere. So you can see this light bulb, and you can create this method. So it generates this method for me. So I can say title, hello. Yeah, so this is the way how you can change the value in the view model, and it will propagate back to the page. So let's rebuild the application again, and now we can refresh the page, and you will see there will be a text box and a button. And so this is bound to the same value as the title. So if I say hello from Prague, and just leave the page, you can see this will change immediately because these two controls, these two places are bound to the same value in the view model. If I create properties for each place, they would have different values. And if I click the change title button, you can see it changes, and also it changes on both places. So with .vvm, it's very easy to design forms, to use buttons, to use all the things you are used to from other technologies. If you are building, for example, WinForms apps or WPF or anything like that, it's very similar. You have a lot of components right here. There are more advanced controls, like, for example, grid view, which you can just give a table from the database and it will print out all the records, or you can use repeater, which is useful if you have collection of objects and you want to render something for each object, etc., etc. There is a lot of things. If you want upload files, there is a file upload component, and there is the IntelliSense, which will tell you which components are actually available here. Yeah, so this is the basic usage of .vvm. So how this started? So together with all the things that Daniel mentioned, that I am like Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. I'm a former regional director. I'm not regional director anymore, but a few years ago I was. And I'm also a founder of Riganti, which is a software company which is based in Prague. Actually, I'm sitting in the offices at Riganti. And we have been, for our customers, we have been building a lot of web applications and other pieces of software. And in 2014, we were using ASP.NET Web Forms, which was Microsoft framework as part of .NET. And it was the way how web applications were built on that time. There was also ASP.NET MVC, but web forms were still very popular. However, at that time, a lot of web applications started to be really interactive. Before these years, many web applications were mostly static, so you loaded some page and then you worked on the page, but only filling some fields or reading some values. There were not many interactive elements, and then you clicked on some button and the entire page was sent to the server, everything got processed, and you got a new page with new information, for example. But at that time, there were a lot of popular sites, also like Facebook, where everything was interactive. Somebody posted a comment and it appeared immediately. Yeah, so these features, because customers saw these features everywhere, so they asked us to make also their applications interactive, same as Facebook, same as everything else, same as any site which you can see today. It's very interactive. Yeah, so in web forms, it wasn't very easy to do. It required learning a lot of JavaScript or jQuery or libraries like that. And at that time, there were frameworks like Angular and React, which were gaining more and more popularity. So we were trying to use this framework. However, it was a huge amount of things you had to learn, because it's not only about learning JavaScript language. You also need to learn all the ecosystem, all patterns, all the libraries which are being used. And these frameworks also, they don't contain all the features you will need. So probably you will also be searching for some other extensions or libraries or components, because, for example, React, it's quite simple library for manipulating with elements in the page. However, if you need some complex component like the grid view, you have to either write it yourself or you need to find some existing grid view and integrate it with the framework, because React, it's quite low level. Yeah. And also because the server-side part, it was still in .NET, and the client side, the page was in JavaScript, it means that you need to build some API on the server, which the JavaScript can communicate with. And also a lot of things we had to declare twice, because the same information about the order had to be on the server and on the client, and you have two languages to express the same thing. So a lot of code was basically duplicated between two places in different languages. So it wasn't very practical. So we didn't, at the end of the day, we didn't end it with Angular or React. We found a library called Knockout.js, which is also very lightweight, but we liked it because it was using the model view model approach. You have seen view models in .vvm, and they are heavily inspired with view models in Knockout.js. And we have also been building some WPF applications, so we knew this design pattern from that. So it looked practical to use the MVVM approach for building these web apps. But same as Angular or React, even if we used Knockout.js, which is a JavaScript library, also we had to duplicate a lot of code. We had the order class in the C# code, and then we had the same class in JavaScript because Knockout needed to know the structure of the order and things like that. Also the validation, if the end user entered data, we wanted to display the error message immediately. So we had to write the validation code in JavaScript, but of course you need to validate everything on the server. So we had the same code in different language also on the server. We had to create the API, and because the API changes frequently, you can break the JavaScript part of the application. So we have been generating TypeScript clients and using TypeScript to make sure that we don't have any typos and anything like that. But still, it wasn't perfect at that time, and there were no IntelliSense on many places where we expected it. So the development was quite slow because everyone has been doing some typos. And it takes some time until you discover it. There is no compiler that would check everything, the entire code base, and said, okay, this function is not declared. You had to click through the application and just find if it works, and if it's not working, you had to look in the DevTools and find where you made the typo. So it wasn't very practical. And so we got the idea, okay, we like Knockout.js, it's really practical, but we don't like how much code we need to write and that there are some duplicate things we need to do. So what if we just could get rid of the JavaScript part and just use the server-side things in C#, because C# has IntelliSense, C# has debugger, C# has great tooling in Visual Studio, and we could somehow generate the JavaScript part because it's not very complicated, and most of it was just a repetitive piece of code that could be generated from the C# part. So that was the initial idea. So we have sat down and figured out how the syntax should look like, how the components will look like if there is the data binding, and how it would be declared. And we also added things like validation, because most of the applications we were writing was some data-driven applications with a lot of forms or complicated grids. So these kind of things, we wanted to make them really easy to do. And also we didn't have good experience with ASP.NET Web Forms, because if we used some controls from Web Forms, they generated really ugly HTML code, and it was not very easy to make good styling for the controls. So we focused on the controls in .vvm, so that they would generate very simple and easily stylable HTML code. So the grid view renders a pure table in HTML, and you can apply CSS to make the table look exactly as you like. So this is what we focused on. And we didn't plan originally to make it open source, but then we saw, okay, this is a great tool. It works for our purposes, but maybe it would be useful for someone else. So we placed it on GitHub. By the way, the original name wasn't .vvm. Originally, the framework was called Redwood, but then we saw that the domain redwood.com is taken, and the NuGet package Redwood is already there, and it contains some other thing. So we had to find out some unique names. So basically we said .NET and MVVM. So let's take a part of both these words. So we have .vvm right now, and it's unique. We get the domain, we get the NuGet package and everything. And very shortly after the code appeared on GitHub, I was speaking about .vvm on some conference, and one of the main contributors to .vvm, who is responsible, I think, for 70% of the .vvm code base, he found us and he joined the team. Later, we employed him in Riganti because we really liked what he is doing on the framework. So, we are really grateful for his help. So this is the most active contributor on the framework. It's not me, it's Standa, my colleague. And later we joined the .NET Foundation with the framework because it would help us a bit with marketing of the open source project and spreading the word about the framework. Because the crucial thing, if the project is open source, the crucial thing for the project is to have a good and healthy community. And it's easy to do things locally, like in Czech Republic, many developers know me. So if I create something, people from the Czech Republic will know, but it's very hard to go across the boundaries or to go global with any kind of idea or any kind of project. So this is what we hope that .NET Foundation will help us and is currently helping us with, and not only to us, to all open source projects which are part of the .NET Foundation. So the framework is continuously developed from 2014, so it's like 7 years. Currently, we have the version 3.2, and we are working on 4.0, which should be released later this year. It's an incredible amount of work. It's many thousands of commits on the GitHub, and currently there are about 6 or 7 people who are working on the .vvm project, who are implementing new features or providing feedback, because we use .vvm on many projects in Riganti, so we have the feedback from real scenarios, from real customers. And also we have a great community, and a lot of people and companies are also using .vvm and communicating with us on GitHub and giving us feedback and feature requests. So if you are interested in .vvm, go to our homepage, download the extension for Visual Studio, and you can create a new project and you can start playing. We have the documentation, which is also incredibly complicated and time-consuming process to make it really work. So if you find any problems with the documentation or if you find something that is missing from there, just let us know. It will help us to make the documentation really, really awesome. And we have a Gitter chat. Gitter is a nice service where you can communicate with the team members of GitHub project. So the entire .vvm team is there on Gitter, and so you can engage in discussions there. So if you want to start, download .vvm for Visual Studio and create new project, and you can start playing right now. So if you have any questions, let us know in the comments. I will look in the comments if there are some, but I cannot see anything. So that's it. Even if you have any questions later, just send us a comment. Thanks, and I hope that you will have some fun with .vvm.
Wow, thank you for this presentation about .vvm. In this case, let me add Abdul.
Yeah,
Hey.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Daniel. I hope you can hear me better now. Sorry, I had network issues. All right, thank you,
Don't
Thomas.
worry.
Yeah, I agree with you on the challenging part regarding learning React.js and AngularJS. So even I found it difficulty basically implementing in the first stage. So with .vvm, basically it's removing the challenges, and it's like very easy to install, and it's basically easy to test as well. And also like I didn't know about the Redwood part, so it's one of my favorite tools.
Yeah, this is new.
Yeah, it would be awesome maybe to like name our like .vvm beta version or alpha version as Redwood, and then maybe like main version as .vvm, something we can think of.
It was very long time ago. I think it's like 5 or 6 years ago, because even before we released the first version, we needed to just rename the project because the name Redwood was taken on NuGet. So we found out when we are very happy that we want to publish the first version of the framework, and boom, okay, this name is taken. We have to rename everything. So it was a nice moment.
Yeah, it's fun to know about it. If anyone have any questions, feel free to post it in the comment section or in our WhatsApp group, wherever, or you can ask Thomas directly. For those of you who don't know, my name is Abdul. I part of DotVVM community. So Daniel and me are part of this developer advocate team, and we will be completing almost 2 years in a month. So that's why we are organizing this virtual party. And also we have amazing line of speakers. We have diverse, we have developer advocates, we have campus ambassador, and we also have this amazing singer joining us from the North America. So our next session will be from
yeah, before to continue, I want to take this opportunity to ask to Thomas. DotVVM is an incredible framework, and I would to ask you, what were you doing when you thought about creating DotVVM or Redwood back then, and what challenges did you have to know a little more?
You mean what challenges we had when we started, when we started using the framework for our customer projects, or
when you start creating
the first DotVVM framework? What challenges did you have, writing the code, or the building the team, or something
as author? Exactly.
Oh yeah. I think the biggest challenge was that I really didn't know what it takes to create a successful open source project, because I thought that it would be most of the time about the programming, but actually this was the easiest part, basically, because the open source project, it's also about documentation, it's also about supporting the community. So if the community has any problems, you need to create sample apps, you need to respond, you need to help the users. And of course, it takes a lot of time. Sometimes it takes more time to support the community than to do actual programming. And of course, everybody would like to develop new features and enhance the framework instead of replying to some emails. But the framework without the community is useless. So it's a lot of things, and the programming and building new features in the framework is just 10% of the entire effort. And also speaking about conferences, about the DotVVM, or doing events, writing articles, doing whatever we can to spread the word about the framework so the community can grow. This is the most important part. It's more important than delivering a new feature in the framework. On the other hand, when the framework is used on some customer projects and they need some feature, of course, we are pushed to add the feature to the framework too. So the biggest challenge is to balance everything, because once you don't focus on one part, or if you don't give it enough attention, it will start making problems. So you need to balance all the aspects of the project, not only the programming and the code, and also marketing, support, and of course everything else.
Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even I have questions what's your a biggest dream of DotVVM? Where do you see yourself about DotVVM in next 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years?
Well, I think that still we have a lot of work in front of us. There is also, of course, a lot of features I would like to have in the framework, but also I would like it to be more known as an alternative to Blazor or other frameworks on top of ASP.NET Core, because I think that the model view model approach is still very interesting and can be practical for many kinds of applications. And when I compare how things are done in DotVVM and in Blazor, I still think that we have some things in DotVVM that are easier than with Blazor, of course, there is a lot of marketing efforts in Microsoft to push Blazor as the main technology, which is fine. We don't want to compete with Blazor. Maybe we want to fill some gaps to provide a solution for scenarios where Blazor is not the easiest way of getting the thing done or something like that. And so things like that.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, I have like one personal question regarding .vvm. So since you have like lot on your plate, like you have been part of the open source community, and also you are building .vvm, and also you are building Riganti. So how do you keep yourself balanced on all of these aspects? As in, like,
okay, this is also a challenge because to be involved in so many things means that sometimes you are 12 hours in the office and you still haven't finished everything you planned for the day. But luckily, I really like what I'm doing, so I don't mind if I spend some extra hours in the office, because if I wouldn't like any of these things, I would just not be doing it. But since I like all of it, I'm doing all I can.